September 2021, Torrey, Utah. We left Moab, Utah and are now making our way to Torrey, Utah, where we intend to explore Capitol Reef National Park and Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. Traffic through Moab, Utah is already starting to pick up, but it's only a few miles through town and soon the road will smooth out. As we get closer to Torrey, everything starts to change. Instead of all the colors we've seen, now everything looks this gray color, like it's all made out of poured concrete. A cement truck. Maybe it is all made out of poured concrete. This is a very strange place. They even have some very weird looking animals that I guess I have to worry about crossing the street in front of me. Well, anyway, as we roll into Torrey, things get just a little bit more green. Our destination? Sandcreek RV Park. This is a neat little park, and it is a little park. There is no concrete. Everything is hard-packed dirt, but the ground here is very hard, so concrete may not be necessary. It took just a little bit of strategic driving to make it into our spot, but as far as spots go, it wasn't bad. It has good power, good water, good sewer, and it especially has good water, lots of pressure, and I kind of like that. So, for the next week, we're here at Sandcreek, and this is the view out the window. And the next week starts today with a visit to Capitol Reef National Park Visitor Center. We always like to start our visits to a brand new park by visiting the Visitor Center. This is our chance to talk to the rangers and get a little bit of information about the park and pick up hiking maps and driving maps and just in general get a nice overview of what it is we might want to do while we're here. Once we finished at the visitor center, we drove to the very end of the park. We kind of look at the roads, we kind of look at the map and get an idea of what it is we want to hike and what it is we want to drive. Once we came to the end of the paved road, we decided to keep on going down the dirt road because, hey, I got a Jeep. I can do this. The farther down we went, the prettier the canyon, and eventually we ran out of road, so it was time to start walking even deeper into this canyon. This is the Capitol Gorge Trail, and the first site along the trail is the Pioneer Registry. Back in the 1800s, this was part of a road, and it had telegraph poles going along it. The folks that worked on it, the folks that passed through here, inscribed their name in the walls. Once we got past the Pioneer Register, the trail got a little bit rougher and the canyon got a little bit narrower. But that just makes everything that much more beautiful to look at. So much for the easy part of this trail. Now it's time to get to the hard part, straight up. Someplace higher up in these canyons is a place called the Tanks. The tanks are just big depressions in the rocks, like giant pools of water. It's one of the few places where water tends to stick around year-round. Of course, the climb up to these tanks is not that easy, and we have to go a long way up in order to find these things. The trail itself was difficult, and it was also very poorly marked. We got lost more than once trying to find our way to these tanks. But we had a goal. We wanted to have a snack with a view. And the view we wanted was a view of the tanks. So there were lots of tanks, but this is the only one that still had water in it. So the water was kind of green, but hey, It's water in the desert, and the climb itself was fun. After the snack, it was time to make our way back down into the gorge. That's Janet, way down there, and we still have a ways to go. And although this is a desert, you can still find green plants along the way as we hike down through this narrow gorge. After hiking back to the car, it was time to drive the dirt road that would eventually lead us to the paved road that would eventually lead us out of the park, and we can make our way home. But before we made it out of the park, we decided to take a detour down another dirt road. This one would take us to the hiking trail for Cassidy Arch. Now, the hiking trail for Cassidy Arch is another difficult hike, and we've already done one today, so we have no intention of doing it. But we had a little time, so we wanted to look around just a little bit, and wow, was it ever beautiful. We saw a sign that said Arch View, half a mile just up this little canyon, and that's way less than the hike we plan to do tomorrow, so we decided, hey, half a mile just to take a look at the arch would be worth doing. Well, I don't know where we went wrong. We went up this canyon, and it was treacherous, and it took us nowhere. But we had fun. We hiked in as far as we could, and at one point we decided this was far enough because it just got a little bit too hard and sketchy for us. So we turned around and made our way back down. But we did accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. We got a look at this canyon, and now we have an idea of what we need to do tomorrow. One of the main things I think I figured out was that this park is super crowded. This is the line of cars going towards the parking lot, which is where the trail actually starts. The parking lot was jammed. So I think we're going to have lots of people to contend with tomorrow. So, big plans for the day. The Cassidy Arch Trail. And as we suspected, yes, quite a few people. Since it's late September, and it's getting kind of cold, we're not starting our hikes until almost 11 o'clock. So the temperature now is nice and comfy, which is more than I can say for this hike because, my goodness, we are climbing up the side of a cliff. This is way steeper than anything we've done so far. Now the steepness we're handling pretty well. We just slow down a little bit. But the side of a cliff and these narrow ledges are more than I can handle. As any of you know, if you've watched my previous videos, I am deathly afraid of heights. So we've just made it past the first point of the trail, and this is what's ahead of us. And now we need to traverse this ledge all the way over to that point, way over there. By the way, the trail is about 2 or 3 feet wide. Well, I don't like giving in to my fear, but I've reached my limit. I have to turn around and I have to get back down. I'm pretty sure my blood pressure was higher than the cliffs around me. I know that because my vision was starting to tunnel, and it felt like I had lots and lots of cotton stuffed in my ears. Since my sense of balance at this point was a little wonky, I figured safer is better than faster. Although, trust me, I really wanted to go down and go down fast. Janet does not need to be this close to the wall. She doesn't have a balance issue, but she is doing all this just to make me feel a little bit better. By being extra careful, my blood pressure starts to go down. Well, at least a little bit. Well, we couldn't do the Cassidy Arch Trail, but we could do the Grand Wash Trail because it stayed down inside the canyon instead of trying to make me climb up the walls of this thing. This was a nice hike. The canyon got narrow in places, and the rock walls towering above us were just absolutely gorgeous to look at. Not to mention that the shade was pleasant because it was starting to warm up outside. Man, I can't believe we were up there hiking those ledges. But a person has to know their limitations, and I reached mine. Remember yesterday's hike where we tried to get a view of the Cassidy Arch but got lost? Well, today we found it, and there it is. Okay, we saw it, but now it's time for lunch with a view. Well, we had a nice, relaxing lunch with a view, but I'll tell you the truth, I would have preferred a bourbon with a view at this point. And so, after lunch, we still had a few more things to see, like this old schoolhouse that dates back to the 1800s. Our last stop for the day was the Capitol Dome. This rock formation, at least according to the pioneers, looked a lot like the Capitol Dome in Dixie. And the capital part of the Capitol Reef National Park comes from that very rock formation. The reef part comes from some old mariners who thought that this entire area looked like a large above-ground reef. And so we're done for the day. And all that's left is to enjoy a beautiful sunset and get ready for another day of exploring. Today we decided to forego the hiking and just take a drive from Torrey, Utah all the way down to Escalante along Highway 12. Highway 12 takes us up through the Dixie forest where there appear to be a great many cows. And they are serious. There are a great many cows because the sign got bigger. It seems that most of the national forest up here is an open pasture because cows were all over the road. You find a campground, you find cows. This is September and we're pretty high up in the mountains and the fall colors are starting to come in. We picked a good time to cross these mountains to see all of these beautiful colors. Once we crossed the mountain and got out of the Dixie National Forest, we dropped down into Boulder. Here the terrain changed all over again. No more trees, no more greens. We were back in the canyons. This area looks a lot like the Capitol Reef National Park that we just explored. And since we are in Canyonland, instead of making me hike across a narrow little ledge with drop-offs on both sides, we get to drive across a narrow little ledge with drop-offs on both sides. I just love it here. So what? Would investing in a few guardrails just like break the state of Utah? Come on, put one or two up here anyway, would you? And the road again takes us lower and lower back into the canyons as we make our way in for the last few miles to Escalante, Utah. Our first stop is the Escalante's Visitor Center. We came here just to get some information on the park because we're not quite sure where to go yet. After a talk with the rangers, we went to the Esca-latte coffee shop. We had to go there because, the name. It's just so cool. The coffee was okay, but again, it was the name. Esca-latte. So cute. After the coffee and a little bit of looking around, we made our way back to Torrey across that narrow little ledge of a road that's seriously missing some guardrails. As we made our way back up to Torrey, we stopped along the way for some sightseeing and, of course, lunch with a view. Lunch had a wonderful view, but we were high up in the mountains, and whenever a cloud covered up the sun, we got just a little chilly. But with this kind of a view, well, you kind of forget about it. We stopped at several more scenic viewpoints and a couple of picnic areas up in the forest, and along the way, we met this woman. And thanks to her, we enjoyed a view with music. We listened to her play for a while, but eventually we made our way and continued our sightseeing. Once across the mountain and out of the Dixie forest, we were back in the canyons and making our way home to end another wonderful day. And with that, we also end our first 3 days here in Torrey, Utah. We're still going to be here for another 3 days, and there is so much left to see. But that's going to have to wait for the next video. So, with 3 more days here at Torrey, Utah, I'll just remind you again that down in the description you'll find a link to all the places we visited so you can find them easier. And with that, I'll just say that I hope we'll see you again here as we continue to explore this stop.